gel coat scratches are probably going to happen if you own a boat. Everything from superficial scratches, something like the dock rubbing up against your boat, to something more substantial like a piece of cable or rock putting a substantial gouge in there. Now, we've been having a number of questions recently kind of pertaining to this whole short series we've done recently on gel coat repair on this area of our project boat. And you may notice, for example, there's a ding or a scratch right there, and I'm able to kind of hang my fingernail on that. But otherwise around that, it's a fairly flat plane. Now, obviously, again, our razor knife here, we put some scratches in there, and you may have trouble seeing those with your bare eye, but that's where something like the 3M dry guide coat can come in really handy. And look how it makes those highlight, and you can see where the scratches are. Now, we got a third scratch a little further up here, and I hope the camera will pick it up. I cannot catch my fingernail on that, but it's still there. I'm gonna highlight it for you folks with the guide coat. You can see it's right there in that dark area. So we've kind of got like lightest to medium to a deepest one. Now, generally as a rule of thumb, if the scratch is deep enough for you to kind of hang your fingernail on, which you can kind of see when I reach in there, you can actually stop the fingernail and you can hear it. That is probably going to require some gel coat thickened with a little colloidal silica and be added into there. That's a fairly minor repair. Matter of fact, I may even show a little scratch repair like that. This one in the middle here, you could possibly sand it out. I'm not able to catch my fingernail on there, but it's still something you could see when you were buffing. And then these, absolutely, you should be able to sand those out. So what I'm going to do today, though, I want to show you what would happen. I've got some 220 grit paper, and I'm actually going to sand this one out, and it'll show you the result of what you're going to get. And I'm also going to do a little bit of buffing and sanding here to show how easy it is to take those out. Been doing a lot of gel coat repair videos here lately, but that seems like it's a popular topic. But this is the deep one, remember, that we could catch our fingernail on. And again, to emphasize, I would typically recommend filling one that deep, but I want to show you what would happen if you don't. Some people may be inclined to try to sand it all the way out going that deep, and you're going to end up with a divot or a low spot. You can see we've made a little progress, but the guide coat is showing us we've still got more to go. Almost gone. And there we are. So we have actually sanded that deep scratch away. Now, some boats won't have enough gel coat to even allow you to do that. You may actually sand all the way through. I can actually fill the low spot or the divot with my fingers. Now, for a comparison's sake, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sand out the others. Now, 220 is fairly aggressive, and the way I did this was absolutely wrong if you were home, holding the edge down and grinding it out. On these scratches, I'm going to use the 220, but we're going to go with a very flat pass with our dual action sander. You can see how quickly we got most of those are gone, according to the guide coat. Still showing a few little halos down there, but they're fairly minor. And then we'll go ahead, for comparison's sake, and move to this one. But I'm going to do this one in a more appropriate. This middle one here was kind of an in-between scratch. You could possibly fill it or you could possibly sand it, but you never want to use the edge of your DA or your sander to just gouge it out. You want to use the panel, keep it nice and flat. Take material from a larger area. Now, again, remember, it's very important to note that all boats are going to be different as far as the thickness of the gel coat. Very subtle right there. You can still see it. A little more with the keeping the pad flat is going to be the key. We're kind of beveling this out rather than creating a divot. This is going to be a really cool comparison for everybody. Now we're just going to fly through this really, really quick. Typically, I would go through all of these grits. We're going from 220, 400, 600, 800. And typically what we would do is dry this off, and we would hit it with some guide coat between each pass. A little bit of water on the pad, on the disc. Gonna go. Just for comparison's sake, right there where the deepest one is, I'm gonna use the edge to show what not to do. So again, never ever do what I just did in that spot, but hold it flat and level. Folks, if you're new to the channel, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Joe Buskins. I'm a second generation professional boat builder, 100-ton licensed captain. This is our family's boat shop. That's our 29-footer in the background that we built here by hand. And this is our current project boat. So I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Jump to 600. Now we've got over 170 videos currently, all kind of boat building, repair, maintenance videos. So feel free to check back in the channel if you want to see more of our videos, everything from fiberglassing stringers and transoms, like I said, to complete boat construction videos. So we've switched brands. This is a 3M, but that's going to be some 600. And again, this is water with just a little bit of soap. I kind of like Dawn, seems to work good for me. But other dish soaps can work just fine. Up, down, back and forth, up, down, back and forth. And our one little spot that is deep, I'm gonna hit it like you shouldn't, but just for demonstration purposes. That's a no-no there, but I've been getting a lot of questions about how deep of a scratch can you sand out. Even if you sand all the way through the gel coat, what should you do and how do you remedy that? And let me know if y'all be interested in seeing a video on that topic. I'll listen to and read all the comments y'all make. So that's where we get a lot of our content ideas. Going to 800. That's the 3M 800, and we're using a Hutchins, a very good air tool, by the way, folks. You don't have to have a high-end air tool. You can use something as simple as a wood block. You can make an assortment of these, wrap a piece of sandpaper around them and sand away, but you can certainly get a lot more done if you got some air tools. Now, generally when we're wet sanding, an air tool is going to be better than an electric for obvious reasons. Water and electricity, probably a bad idea there. So if you don't have compressed air and an air tool, I would definitely make some little blocks, or matter of fact, 3M make some really good Velcro backed sanding pads, and I'll have a link below our video's description. We've actually got a really nice Amazon store now with everything we use on the channel is there for your convenience. Okay, here we go. Up, down, back and forth. For you folks out there wondering too, I had some questions about what is this discoloration on the hull. That is where the old decals were, and we removed them. And you can expect sometimes on older boats for there to be what we call a halo effect. And a lot of times we will actually sand those out. You can see that even though there's still a little bit of a halo there, that 800 is starting to remove some of that discoloration. And that's our little deep spot there. I'm going to hit it with the 800. Again, the wrong way to do it, but just for comparison's sake, sometimes you need to see the wrong way to understand the difference between it and the right way. Always want to keep the pad flat to the surface. You don't want to dig in on the edges. We're going to 1200 at this point. Now again, typically I would be drying that surface off and then going back with some of the 3M, the dry guide coat. If you've never used that, this stuff goes a long way. It lasts forever, and it'll show you where you've sanded, where there's little imperfections and scratches, and let you know when, most importantly, let you know when you've sanded far enough to have removed all the problems. All right, start with the front. Right there in our little, just so that we can get a shine on that and you can see what happens. Let's do a nice rinse from the top. Generally 220 to 1200 is the way I go. Sometimes we'll start with 320, or if you're new to wet sanding, you maybe want to start with 400. Typically after each pass I would dry that off. Now you don't need a massive compressor to do this kind of work, even just having something to blow your surfaces off. But if you can get something in at least a 20 gallon and say 3.5 to 5 horsepower, obviously bigger is better. Very important for the surface to be completely dry before you apply any of the guide coat, or else it will kind of gum it up. There we go. You always want to be moving around when you're using a heat source like a heat gun. It can burn or damage the gel coat, and it can burn or damage you if you let it get too close to your skin or your hair. So keep that in mind. Now remember, we had a bunch of the zigzag, the light scratches here. And then we had our deeper little divot right there. And then we had our medium one over here. And I think I'm going to do one more pass with the 1200 just to kind of really polish things up and show. Now this is interesting. If you look, hope the camera will pick it up. If you look really close right there, you can actually see some of those crisscross scratches. We'll focus right on that little spot where those little scratches were. Remember, just take your time, don't get in a rush. This is new to you, just try to enjoy the process. All right, that's looking better, maybe a little bit more. I can see a very faint scratch. You can see how the guide coat even shows where the silhouette of the old decals. What happens is as gel coat ages, UV and sunlight kind of erodes it. The vinyl or the plastic wraps on these actually protects the gel coat, and it'll be standing out a little bit proud of the old gel coat. So basically this has been sheltered from UV its whole life, and it's going to actually stick out a little bit. So that's what you're seeing there, and the guide coat again can kind of help you if you're trying to sand or remove that. All right, that's looking pretty good, I would say. Ran through a bottle of our water there pretty quick. Here we go, folks. We've cleaned our surfaces off. We're going with some of the aqua blue fast cut. That's going to do a really nice job paired with the white heavy cut wool pad. We got a pretty big area here. Generally, say 2 or 3 foot square is about as much surface area as we're typically going to do in a pass. I find that putting a little material on a bristle brush, kind of spreading it over the surface is a good way to get the right amount. Of course, if you're a professional and been doing this, you would kind of know how much to apply, but a lot of you folks out there are DIYers and just kind of getting into this. But for the initial cut, a heavy cut or fast cut with a white pad is going to be the way to go. This is a variable speed Bosch, and we got a Velcro pad on here that's really easy to switch out if we need to. And we're running this thing at about 750 RPMs. This is a variable speed. I'm running it all the way down on the lowest setting. I generally like to kind of work in the material into the pad a little bit and then just ease into it. Keeping a nice flat pad. Gelcoat is going to be a little more tolerant than paint. You wouldn't want to be this aggressive on the automotive style surfaces, but Gelcoat is pretty tough. It'll take it, but we continue to move. Run it on its lowest setting. We're going to get some shine back for sure. All right, again, we're just kind of plowing through this to give everybody at home an idea of the basic process. Let's get that camera at a real low angle. You can actually see that divot there starting to be highlighted. That is kind of what we're talking about, but our little other scratches that we formed up here and the one that we sanded out are looking really good. Now we're gonna move to a finer, this is more of a polish. This is gonna be less aggressive. And we're gonna switch our pads out. Now, I'm also gonna be making a video. Let me know if y'all are interested in how to clean a buffing pad once you've used it a bit. That's very important. And another phase that is very important, and I mentioned it on our last video, but I'm gonna mention it again, is that between compounds, you're gonna want to rinse the surface a bit. We don't want any of the heavy cut compound on the surface when we're going in with a light cut. It can contaminate the pad and you're not going to get all the benefits of the progressively finer grit. Now what I like to do before I start a new phase, I like to spin the wheel up, and if you got some compressed air, just blow out the pad a little bit. Good way to kind of clean it of any dust or any residue that might be on there. If I haven't mentioned it already, you want to be very careful of articles of loose clothing, long hair, anything that may get caught or grab in the buffing wheel, because it'll definitely wind you up in there. Now again, we're dealing with the aqua blue. You can source this and all the supplies we've been using through Fiberglass Warehouse. Don't forget to save some money using your Fish Bump TV discount code. So that's Fiberglass Warehouse. They've got Gelcoat, buffing supplies, really everything you're gonna need to do this kind of work. All right, we're not gonna go too crazy here. Again, just a little light coat everywhere. And there are varying opinions on how to do this, folks. I'm trying to make this so that your average DIYer at home can get a grasp. If you're a professional, there may be things you can kind of get away with, or slightly different techniques that you may use. And honestly, if people want to contribute by commenting or kind of giving me some ideas or suggestions, always feel free to do that. And if you think we're doing a good job, always ask people to reach up there and hit that little subscribe button. It takes a second to do it, totally free to do so. And that helps encourage us to do more of this kind of work. So I want to thank everybody so much for doing that. So here we go again. On our lowest setting, we're going to work this in just a little bit before taking off. That'll keep it from slinging everywhere. Up, down, back and forth. Going to be the way to go. Wow, that's a drastic improvement here, but again, a real low camera angle. And if you look where my finger is, this is where I sanded out that deep divot, and you can actually see the reflection in the light, and I hope the camera angle shows that up. But where we had the other moderate size scratch over here, you can see we sanded that on a nice flat and level plane, and then our crisscross scratches that we put in there with our razor knife are gone away. So that kind of gives you folks an idea at home. Now, if you were going through all these phases, there's one last final product. A lot of times we would go over that with a good heavy duty paste wax. There are lots of options out there for that, but I've found that the Colonite is really good. And again, we will list all that in our Amazon store below. our video's description. So if you folks enjoyed that and actually want to see maybe in future episodes, I think what we will do next is go through how do we clean these buffing pads up for you folks at home. But hopefully you enjoyed that video. If you did, hit that like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. It's Captain Joe here, Island Marine Charters, Fish Bump TV. My son Logan working hard behind the scenes as my amazing cameraman. And we'll catch you folks in the next episode.